Hello and welcome to the Hannah Judson Beat. I'm Hannah Judson and today's guest is Ariel Hyatt. I'm so happy that you're here with me today. So Ariel is a PR expert. She's an author. She's also an educator and many other things. So today we're going to unpack a little bit more about your work and hopefully more than just your work. But how are you today?
I'm amazing. I just spent a month in New York City. I'm now back. I've moved out of New York. I'm a born and raised New York City girl. I now live in Western Massachusetts, and it is nice to be in the peace and quiet now.
Yeah. So did that move come out of was that a pandemic move?
It was. It was. My parents are 86 years old. And they moved up. They also live in Manhattan, but of course, when everything hit, they moved up here,
Yeah.
where my dad is born and raised up here. So we've always had a second home in this area growing up in New York. So they moved up to their second home, and then we followed them and moved up here in November.
So did you go through culture shock?
Yes. Yes. We were definitely not prepared for rural winter. It's really different from urban winter.
Yeah.
So we're still finding our snow boots and sea legs, as it were. But yeah, I think that was the one thing that was just it was a hard adjustment. Both my husband and I are born and raised Manhattan kids, and he's never left the city. I at least have lived in Colorado,
Yeah.
albeit in Boulder, which is not rural. So yeah, it's been an adjustment, but it's been really good.
Yeah. And so your work travels with you 100% or maybe 90%. Is there anything you had to leave behind?
No, I mean, not during a pandemic, that's for sure. So I hope that I know that what we're all sort of learning through this pandemic globally is that, especially if you look at like what's happening in San Francisco, mass exodus, New York City, mass exodus, people are finally given the opportunity to choose lifestyle over, where they needed it. Obviously, if you worked at Google or Facebook or anything high tech, you had to live in San Francisco or in the immediate area. Well, what did that mean? That meant a studio apartment was $1 million. That meant your rent was astronomical. That meant you had to abide by the guidelines of massive city life, which I think when given a choice, you could buy a ginormous house in a fabulous other city. And I love that we're seeing the rise of all these new cities that have always been there, but now people are moving to Chicago, to Cincinnati, to Pittsburgh, to places where the cost of living is less.
Yeah, definitely. So that is interesting. We're seeing that in France also. So I live just outside of Paris. I live in a little village on the Seine River, and it's really beautiful here. And I think we've had the same thing where Parisians have flocked down, and the real estate market is booming right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and I think that's probably a global thing. My family is in Maine. I'm originally from Maine, and there's the same stories going on there as well.
A Mainer in Paris. Okay, we have to talk about that sometime during this.
Yeah, feel free to ask me anything.
Fantastic. I lived in France, in Dijon, when I was in college.
Okay.
I studied there. And, France in the early 90s was incredibly different from what it is now,
Yeah.
Especially a provincial town like Dijon.
Definitely.
So the work does go wherever I go. And I think that's another freedom that we're experiencing globally, is that people are going to now have more choices, and even people that work at big companies, they can now live where they want to live, which I think it's a fantastic gift.
I think it is probably going to be the biggest game changer that's coming out of this, besides maybe medical understanding about pandemics and all of that. But
Yeah.
definitely that can't get put back in the box. People, so working remotely has always been near and dear to my heart. And the first time, like way back in the 90s, when the internet first sort of creeped into my life, I thought, how do I do this? Like, how do I make this work for me? And my first thought was, I have a laptop and I'm on a Caribbean island and I'm working. And I was like, I'm working, but what am I doing? But I was always intrigued with this idea of working on your laptop from other places and not
Yeah.
being attached to the city. Um, and I think, yeah, it's definitely something that is here to stay. And it's also interesting because musicians also are, it's not just for office work, it's for really everybody.
Right.
So are you going to do you have to pivot at all with the work that you do with your musicians now that everybody's remote, or is it the same information and the same kind of help that people need?
It's interesting. It's the same information and the same help that people need, but I've had a deep shift as far as what it is I want to do with clients. And I think, well, two things precipitated that aside from the obvious, which is we can't travel anymore, right? So I used to have a life where I was speaking a lot and traveling internationally a lot. That sort of got curtailed before the pandemic because I was trying to get pregnant and I am damn near 50 years old. So that meant no travel, no airplanes, nothing stressful on the body. So I already sort of had taken myself out of that life of just being like a whirling dervish going all over the place. But what staying at home and then staying at home with a baby really brought to our company is we got to work deeper with our clients. And our clients needed it because there was a lot of frustration and confusion and upset around, oh my God, what am I doing now?
Wow.
There was a rise in collective anxiety, stress, upset, and I think there still is. And then, of course, add the political atmosphere. It was just sort of like we were just getting really, really smashed in the face is like the only way I can say it. And I realized the abuse of what was going on when you have a leader like Donald Trump, who is at the very least a narcissist and probably a sociopath. I think creative people tend to have a lot of history around narcissists in their life. I really feel this. When you have a desire to shine your light and when you feel you have a special talent and you want to go and show it to the world, I think for many of us, that desire comes because something in their life was tamping that down and they weren't allowed that as children. So this is all to say that this sort of collective abuse that we were all suffering at the hands of a narcissist triggered a lot in my artist clients who already struggle with marketing, promotion, especially the women being seen, putting themselves out there. These are all not easy things. And then you couple that with the fact that social media makes us all feel worse about ourselves collectively. And then you add the enormous irresponsibility that happened when you look at like Facebook's part in what went on with our government, and you look at all these people storming our nation's most sacred building, live streaming, and then you just really begin to ask yourself like, okay, where as an artist and a creative person does like all of that fit in, and how do you reckon with that part of the conversation? So the pivot that we experienced, and we are still really going through it, is our clients wanted more of us. They wanted more time with us. We started doing more kind of managerial things because management is something most artists don't have the privilege of having on their team for obvious reasons. And so that's been the real shift, is our clients have been more intimate with us. And it's really helped me to get back to my essence of when I was a 24-year-old kid. I started my business really young. I had such intimate relationships with my clients at that time because I was like a 24-year-old kid and I was on the road with my clients. I was doing tactical traditional PR, which meant I was going to the paper store and selecting what envelope should this press release go in and what paperclip should I put on it and how would I, all of that was so meaningful to me. And then as I went on my entrepreneur journey, which is all about, scalability, and you go to any coach and they tell you that you have to, more is better.
Mhm.
I really bought into that. And I think this pandemic has brought me back to more is not better. Not for me, maybe for other people. Fewer is better because we can serve better. So that's been our pivot.
Wow. That is interesting. You just said a million interesting things in the past.
I just realized, like, was that even an answer? I just did a lot of things, but I did want to sort of give you the context for why would we need to pivot, and what I think there's something really heavy happening for artists, especially now.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I love the way you said that, and I haven't heard anyone say it the way you just said it, but about just the who artists are, what their motivation is, and then here being faced with another narcissist. But it's not just the need to respond to what's going on in the news. It's being alive and present in this situation that is actually happening. And I think definitely if you were in, Brooklyn or Manhattan, you were really in the thick of it. And
Yeah, it was really emotional. I was a new mom. So my son was born on February 4th.
congratulations.
Thank you. So we were home, and all of a sudden the nanny that we found, this brilliant, amazing, incredible, we had to say goodbye to her forever. And it was just the two of us in our house with nothing but sirens. And it was just the two of us and a screaming infant and nothing but sirens. And then that 7 o'clock clap that happened. Did Paris do that? The 7 o'clock?
Yeah, we did that out here in the countryside as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a really emotional time. And yeah, it really did bring us, I think a lot of us have been confronted with the heaviness and the deepness of this. Of course, not only the people that live in major cities, but now everyone everywhere. But it felt, I mean, I've never lived in a war, but it felt like that.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law she grew up in Bangkok during World War II, and she says this is the feeling of when that utter fear that grips you. That was the same feeling.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I think, it's so interesting how when history is, unfolding right in front of you, sometimes it's hard to know exactly where you are in the historical moment. Like,
Mhm.
is this, where's this going? And also some parts of your life are still okay and calm and, maybe inside your house or whatever. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing too. Like, are we headed into the worst case scenario, or is this just a bad day? And you can feel multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, we have a few viewers are with us. So you guys, thanks for joining us today in this conversation. And so Ariel, can you tell us just a little bit about what you do with your clients? Because I think that some of our viewers might not know.
Yes. So we're called cyber PR, and I started as a traditional publicist, and getting publicity for our clients has always been at the heart of what we do. But a couple of years into my career, 10 years in, I realized that publicity is not really the first thing that most artists need. What they need is artist development, and what they need is someone to help them with all the other pieces, because as it's gotten crazier and crazier with the amount of artists flooding the marketplace, and 40,000 tracks a day going up on Spotify. This is just like a mind-blowing statistic. And I realized that I knew all these other things. I worked at a record label and had a really amazing experience as a young person, and learned what all the departments do really intimately. So I understood the mechanics of what a record label does, how they distribute music, how they promote, market, and all of our artists were hyper touring artists. So I also had that education. Then I worked at a concert promotions company. So I understood like buying and selling talent and what putting shows on were like. Then I owned a booking agency and I was very successful. I always had my PR firm, but I added booking to the mix. So I have all this knowledge about how to book a tour and how all of that goes. And then I have this unique purview where most of my clients, the only person that they have on their team is me.
Mhm.
And so my job as publicist sort of wasn't only that, because clients would call me and be like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, help me. Then I got very interested in social media in the very early days. And I think that I wrote the first book on record for musicians about how to use social media for marketing, called Music Success in 9 Weeks. That was 2008. And I was just really turned on by this new way that artists could connect to fans. I thought, this is amazing. But I realized also that it was confounding and confusing and overwhelming, because all of a sudden you had to do all this on top of all the other things. So this is all to say that what I do is artist development. We're sort of a hybrid management, artist development, therapy, PR firm. And then I have this amazing team. We're an all-female team. And a thing that we began to notice was we mostly write long-term marketing plans for our artists. Our artists, we were delivering these giant plans that were like 300 PowerPoint slides deep of like, here's all the things you need to do. And artists were showing up at my office like in the fetal position from the stress of like all of that overwhelm. It was too much. And we realized, okay, we're not helping our clients by just showing them all the things. They really needed help implementing all those things. So our new role, and it's really taken off since the pandemic, is actually rolling up our sleeves and doing stuff for our clients. So we do everything from write newsletters to create pre-save campaigns to design graphics for social media. Anything that's like confounding or stopping an artist, we will help you through those pieces if we can. And so that is what we do: marketing plans, implementation, and PR.
Cool. And so I always think of you also as an educator. I think of you as somebody who explains to people how things are done, explains why things are done a certain way, explains, it explains the context of things. Like, you're really not just doing things for people or telling them once. You really want people to understand the world that we're living in. It seems like I feel like you're a natural educator. Is that part of your?
Yeah, this is my, I don't want to call it a side hustle because it's very much part of my brand. The education piece is something that is my passion. It's like almost like, it's weird. It's my hobby. It's like writing articles and demystifying things. And I love educating. And I think it comes from the place of when I was young and in college, got my liberal arts degree in nothing and graduated like basically unprepared to do anything. Except I did study in France and I could sort of speak French. That was like the only thing that like I could do. It was a theater major, for God's sake. What is that? Anyway, I got out of school and it was pre-Google, right? It was pre-internet. That you couldn't just Google like, how do I get a job in the music business? Or what the hell does a publicist do, right? I sort of had to figure all that stuff out. And I realized early on that I felt like it was like my duty to also educate. And so that part of it, I realized as I started studying internet marketing and studying how marketing works, that was also a way that you could position your company if you wanted to do that. And that really turned me on. The idea of not only doing the work for my clients, but also providing education and the halo effect of that. And it was not something I set out to do, but it was really gratifying when it started happening, was educators started contacting me and saying, we're using your book in our class. Can you come give a lecture? And I was like, oh my God, I never thought of that. So that was like a beautiful sort of thing that ended up happening as a result of just this, my passion to help just explain further. Because what was happening, especially early days before the internet, was my phone would ring and it would be a musician, and they would say, "Oh, you're a publicist, you're a PR firm. Is that like publishing?" And I'd be like, "No, no, it starts with PUB, but it's not the same." And I was spending hours explaining to people what I actually did. So out of sort of frustration of like, I'm never going to get my job done if my phone's ringing all day long and artists are like, what is PR? I wrote this little article called How to Be Your Own Publicist. And I got a website. It was 1996. It was early days. And I just put that on there and I could say, hey, go read that article. That article was basically the backbone of Music Success in 9 Weeks, and has been repurposed and republished thousands of times over the years. And so that is part of the brand. It's part of what makes us really proud. Everyone on my team loves educating artists. And I think, the old adage, teach a man to fish, right? I think about that. But I also think about like, it's really unfair. Artists are not born with the innate ability to like do a lot of this stuff. It's not, no one goes, I really want to record music because I'd love to go on Instagram. Like those two things do not go together. So, we love to be there to just sort of help give you the reason why you need to do this or not, if you choose not to, and make it easy and simple, because that's the part where, Google any of this stuff and there's 3,000 articles about how to do all of this stuff the right way. We try to make it so we cut through the noise and we give you the fastest, best way.
Yeah, that is a great strategy. And I have to say that I had on my bookshelf right here, Music Success in 9 Weeks for many years. And I was just telling my husband, I was on Twitter the other day, and it was thanks to that book, because I was on the Twitter chapter, and I was like, I need to make a Twitter account now, even though I do not tweet that much. But I'm sure a lot of people have stories like that you have given people sort of structure in a world that is overwhelming, in the overwhelming world. So what are you working on now? Like, what are you?
Yeah, my first book in 5 years is coming in May. It is called The Ultimate Guide to Music PR. And I have a little sort of pamphlet, which you can buy on Amazon, called The Ultimate Guide to Music PR. But I started looking at it and going, wow, music PR has changed so much, especially in the last few years, that I really updated and expanded upon that little pamphlet. And for this one, I reached out to a lot of people that spend their lives publicizing music. So I have some incredible guidance and quotes and moments from some of the top music publicists in the field, and music marketers. There's 11 highlights of musicians and artists who have done things that I think are exceptional examples of living PR in some form or fashion, whether it's doing it really well in real life or being very successful at live streaming, which is a new thing. So it's got artist highlights. It's got a lot of cool quotes and advice from people who do publicity all day long. And then I also have a lot of quotes and advice tidbits from music bloggers, playlisters, and actual music journalists. So it's a really, I'm excited about this book. It's going to hopefully shed a lot of light for people that are confused about publicity, playlisting, how it all fits together.
Yeah, it sounds like a book that could be adopted as a textbook. I mean, as part of a program, because those are all things that artists need to know when you are responsible for your whole production from A to Z. So very interesting. So when does that come out?
It's going to come out in the first 2 weeks of May. We haven't gotten a perfect date yet, but right around then.
Okay, cool. And where can people find it?
You'll be able to find it at my website at cyberprmusic.com, and also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the book places.
Okay, very cool. And what else are you working on?
Just the agency, working with clients, just the agency. Working with our clients is what I do a lot. And then, of course, I speak to a lot of artists who are interested in perhaps working with us, but they're not sure and they're making decisions. So kind of split my time up between doing the actual work for the clients that are with us and then talking to artists that are interested in working with us, which is how I met you. And raising a kid in the middle of a pandemic with no help.
I was going to ask you about that. So you had a baby a year and 2 weeks ago, or maybe
Yeah.
3 weeks ago. So how has this past year been just on that front?
Amazing, really special and sweet and hard, not gonna lie. I think every parent is having hard right now. Um, I don't know one parent that signed up for, like, this whole thing. I mean, none of us signed up for this globally, but I will say that my friends who are single are the ones who actually have a structure, like, they have partners or they're not fully alone and isolated, because that's a whole other thing. But, yeah, it's been having a baby is, for those of us who have parented, is like a waking meditation, and it really forced me to kind of, "This is what you're doing, like, you have to do this, and you have to do something every 2 hours for the first several months," right? And then it's just amazing to watch a little person grow. So it's been really special, and it's been interesting to do at my age because I've been watching, I'm in a mommy's group and everyone is like 30 and I'm 20 years older than them. And I think it's also a gift to kind of do this motherhood thing backwards in a lot of ways, because I I'm not struggling with, oh wow, I'm going to be taken off my career path, because my career path is already 25 years old. So that's really cool. So yeah, and it's also been really beautiful to be a parent during a time when I think everybody is more forgiving towards parents. And I love all the, like, when you see these moments of, like, the one that I'm thinking of now is was a woman reading the weather in the US somewhere, and she had her fabulous weather lady dress on, and there was a map of everything behind her, and she was obviously at a green screen. She was reading the weather in the middle of a live broadcast, and her little toddler came in the middle of it, was like, "Mama," and she just had to scoop him up and continue reading the weather. And I mean, we've seen it, right? People on Zoom calls on, networks, and there's like babies and cats, and I mean, this is our reality now. And I like it. I think it's really bringing us back to, like, what has always been the reality, except we've always had to separate this from that.
Yeah.
Um,
You use an interesting word about people are more forgiving now about parenthood. Do you say forgiving about parenthood or children? But
yeah, either. I mean, like, that was sort of a thing. Like, I had one client who, like, called me, and he was genuinely concerned. Like, he was like, "So are you going to quit? Like, am I going to lose my team?" And I was like, "I've been doing this for 25 years. No, I'm not quitting." And he was like, "Oh, okay, because you're a mom now." And I was like, "Wow, okay, that's one way I guess people look at this." But I mean, also, especially in corporate, like, people were supposed to kind of,
make a choice.
yeah,
Yeah. Or hide it. Yeah.
hide it,
Yeah.
hide it. Can't hide it now, and they're walking right onto.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That the separation of roles and really sort of the things that really pull people apart. Launching out of your house and going to work. Commuting to work and coming home. Yeah, if we're not doing that, it is all one big pot of soup now.
Mhm.
But yeah, so very interesting. So, are you getting back to the city at all?
Yeah, so we do go back. We go back pretty often, and, it's weird because double masks is now the thing, and New York has a long way to come back. And I'm wondering, do you get into Paris, or do you stay mostly.
I have not gone to Paris for 1 year. It's
Wow.
I think the last time I was there was last March.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. We've been in a crazy lockdown, early. Our lockdown was early, and there was a reprieve last summer, and then we were in another lockdown. And we just got word that we're probably in the Paris region, we're going to go into another lockdown. Like, but we'll see. That it hasn't been determined for sure, but it's getting,
Yeah.
yeah. So we've been in this for a while. Anyway,
Yeah, so it is weird when we go back, but it's also nice to have any kind of food you want in the world delivered to your doorstep without having to cook. So there there are some definite advantages to, um, the other thing that's very cool about New York is people walk everywhere. So even though it's freezing cold, it's nice to be, walking around outside. And
yeah. So does New York feel calm right now? Is it calm or is it empty?
no, no, I wouldn't say it feels calm. There's a lot of homeless. There's a huge, I think a lot of people that don't have homes, they've been forced out of their homes because of, they've been squeezed out. B, they're terrified to go into shelters because you could get COVID. So that's a problem. And then another thing that's gone on is the city is trying to manage keeping people out of shelters where like 50 people sleep in one room. So they started making hotels into places for people who don't have homes. And so they're bringing them into neighborhoods where people were not used to seeing people out like that. And, it's also really hitting home that most people who are on the streets, they obviously they have emotional issues and they're medicated for all kinds of things. So it feels very much like the New York I grew up in, where there's like an edgy, scary happening of like, you got to really keep your wits about you because you don't know if someone is going to roll up on you who is off their meds and having a hard day. And,
Yes,
it's definitely grittier for sure.
that's
And plus, everyone's masked up, which is, you're inside your house and you're with your family, but then you go out and you see the reality of like what that looks like. And it's very, very strange.
yeah.
Huh.
Are there any sort of points of light in the news or in your field of vision in terms of the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden, thank God, right? I mean, I think we're all, well, not we all, 74 million of us are not breathing a sigh of relief, which is crazy to me. But um, yes, I think we're going to hopefully get through this. Obviously, the vaccine coming is relieving, but now we've got some really scary news about that too, that we're not sure about these new variants. And um, but I do feel hopeful. I feel we've already kind of said this, like this sort of integration of like work and home and family, living where you want to live, improving your own quality of life. This is very much happened for people who are working in corporate jobs and also for entrepreneurs. But there's also a lot of people that we're really going to have to think about, like this minimum wage question that's popped up, that this sort of, there's really two Americas, and that is the bleak news, and that needs to be looked at. But I also will say that the thing that makes me feel very positive is we are at the end of Black History Month, turning on my television every day and seeing more Black people getting a light shown on them, stories of Black people, entrepreneurs and people that work in corporate, and just more faces of color and stories. And women are now being included much more than we saw in the media. Today we had MSNBC on, and they are showcasing 50 women over the age of 50 who have helped to change the face of COVID. And
Wow.
so it's everyone from nurses to the woman who runs Pfizer, to there was a fabulous woman who's she gave 4,000 shots in one day to the Black community in Philadelphia. She's a nurse who's in charge of being on the front line. So we're learning about all these heroes, and I think it's very, and look at having Kamala Harris as our vice president. There's going to be a whole new generation of women and girls who can finally see themselves represented. And that, I think, that's the silver lining from all of this anguish that we've experienced for the last 4 years, where women should just show up with heels and a wrap dress. I mean, that was not positive messaging for our girls.
Yeah, nicely said. Yeah, so that's good. From afar, I've also felt the same thing, that we're having news, that the conversations have changed, that there is a new tone in terms of who gets to be on stage, who's talking, who's getting attention. And America is an interesting place. There's so many people who live there. There's so many people who are Americans. And to just, and I think that the next generation is going to have more to work with, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I hear it and see it, whenever I work in schools and lecture at colleges, and it is exciting. There's a lot of things they don't even consider as things. This is how we live our lives. Gender fluidity, yes. Being gay, yes. They're just sort of all about this.
Yeah.
And that's exciting, where it's like, because when everybody just thinks that way, the world changes. That's just the way it is.
That is just the way it is, right? Yeah. And exactly. And certainly things take time, but when you do see the change happening, it's a huge relief, because there's so many things where year after year, you see no change happening when it should.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. That's really nice to hear. So, do you tend to work with women artists, or do you work with whoever calls you up, or do you have certain styles of music that you lean towards? How do you select your clients?
Our clients select us. So that's a huge part of it. This is absolutely a buyer's market for musicians looking for whatever it is they're looking for. And we know that we're not the only choice that can be made. There's on the PR list, which is a list of music publicists, a Google group that I've been a member of for years. There's, I think, 400 music publicists alone on that list. And we talk to each other all day long, giving each other tips and advice and asking, hey, does anyone know what happened to the editor of so-and-so? I'm looking for them. Or, hey, does anyone know how I can get in touch with Meryl Streep? Whatever it is. So it's a buyer's market. The client, I think, comes to us, and we're appealing for a reason or not. So that's kind of the first part. The second part, yes, I think we do tend to resonate with women better, but we had a guy that just signed with us the other day, and he's like, I love that it's all women. He's like, women get stuff done, and you guys know how to multitask, and I can't do that. So, and he was saying, he's married, he has 3 girls, he's really best friends with his mom, and his manager is a woman. And he's like, I love that I just added 5 more women to my team. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. What I look for when people want to come and work with us is you have to really understand where we fit in the music ecosystem. If you call me up and you want to get on Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, Stereo Gum, Drowned in Sound, Brooklyn Vegan, and all the top Spotify playlists, I'm not your girl. I have no idea how to do any of that. That is not what I do. So immediately I can say freely, like, listen, what you want and what I do not connect. Yeah. Concurrently, if you come to me and say, I want 1 million followers on social media, we don't do that either. So we know what we do, and we know what we do well. And so a lot of, I think, how people decide to come to us has to do with what are their goals, and are they up for the cyber PR philosophy, which is not for everyone. It's hard to do things the organic way. It really is. And
so what is the organic way? What does that look like?
It depends on, what we're talking about, but really our core philosophy is every artist needs more people at the other end of their pipeline, their bullhorn, their whatever it is, their microphone. And so when you come to us and you have X amount of people. My job is to go, okay, how can we double that? How can we triple that? How can we quadruple that? And so every artist kind of starts in a different place. An artist that already has 20,000 followers across platforms is in a very different place from an artist that has 500. But we are very good at figuring out, okay, A, what does the artist want to do? There's no formula. When I started 26 years ago at my record label that I worked at, we very much had a formula, and we could follow that formula that worked for touring artists very specifically. And we managed to do great things following pretty much a pattern. There's no pattern anymore. I think we can look at other artists and go, okay, they were successful with this. This worked, this didn't work. But every artist has a unique combination. It's like their own perfume. You have to put a little of this and a little of that. So we look for educability. Are you willing to go on the journey with us? Because it's hard to learn about all this stuff. It's not fun to study the algorithms of Spotify. Like what's fun is making music. What is not fun is figuring out the best 4 times a week to post, right? So we also want artists that are up for it. You have to be up for it. And I love the artist that wants to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And get in their own game. So that's kind of our criteria. And when I hear people, like I had someone just a few days ago, we were on a team call, we were talking about working together, and she had been famous several years ago. And she said, well, I expect results. And I was like, okay, we're not for you. Like,
yeah,
there's definitely a team, I'm sure, somewhere out there you could hire them and just expect results. And she clearly didn't want to do what we would need her to do in order to get those results. And that's cool. Like, that also is something that with age it comes the wonderful ability to say no. And that's been another sort of real guiding light, is like, we ask ourselves, like, if we're in a conversation where, we're thinking about working together and we realize, like, okay, we're really hearing a lot of red flags in this conversation, we have to let this person find a team that can address those if we can't.
So can you describe for us a success story, like one of your favorite transformations, or when you worked with an artist that
There's so many. Yeah, we're working with someone right now who I love, and she has come back to us over the years. Her name is Maxine Lineham. And Maxine Lineham is an Irish gal who emigrated to the US probably about 20 years ago. She started touring Broadway musicals. She was in the touring cast of South Pacific. And she's very much like a siren song, big, beautiful Broadway voice. And then she started creating her own music, releasing her own music, playing in cabarets, fabulous artist. And she's got a big following. She plays performing arts centers. Of course, she's always made her money touring. And now with COVID, she's been on lockdown in Vermont. And we have had such a great time figuring out, like, how can she connect further and deeper to her audience? Who can we help her add to her team? Obviously, her booking agent can't help her right now. So who can help her, and what can we do, and what can we put out? And we have these really lovely conversations. She's also a parent. She's got 2 kids. She's like trying to, balance that. So the success is she keeps figuring out what her next thing to put out in front of her audience is. She keeps testing to look at what's working versus what's not working. And she doesn't get discouraged when something doesn't go the way we thought it would go. And she continues to work with us and let us do our job. And so it's a really beautiful partnership. She's a beautiful artist. She's a lovely human. And it's really fun to also be invited back and back and back and dip in and go, oh, here we are 5 years later, 7 years later, 6 months later, and help her with her career. So she's a real success. I love watching her consistently put herself out there, experiment with things. Her most recent video is for the jazz classic I'll Be Seeing You. It's an arrestingly beautiful video, and it's just her in a dark room, black and white. She filmed it all on her iPhone. She's working it out. She's like, I didn't have the budget to like hire. We had to keep going, and this is what she does. So we love her for that, and we love working with her. And that would be a recent client.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that with us. We've got a question, Andre Mook from the Netherlands. I don't know if you can see the chat, but he says, I have a question. I'm promoting a mature female artist. After the lockdown, we are going to record her new CD LP cassette. As you can see, we are going to be trying to sell physical mediums rather than Spotify live streams. How should I promote this merchandise?
Okay, so the first thing about promoting any merchandise is you need a mailing list to do that. You do not need a Facebook. You do not need an Instagram. You do not need Twitter. You do not need TikTok. You need a mailing list. An email is 70 times more likely to sell something than a tweet, a Facebook post, an Instagram, 70 times more likely. So I would say that if physical goods are your future, the way to promote that merchandise is build your email list. A lot of European clients that we have roll their eyes. No one in Europe uses it. That's not true. Everybody who has a job uses email. And there's always like, we find a lot of resistance to email building because I think it's just so much easier to choose a filter on Instagram and post than it is to put together like a real meaningful email list and communicate well with it. But that's my advice. There is someone I really deeply respect. Her name is Cheryl B. Engelhardt. She has an incredible amount of material. She has a program called Rock Your Email List. Check her out. Study what she teaches. She teaches artists about how to go on an email journey as opposed to just blasting a newsletter to them once a month. So that's my best advice for you as far as merchandise. Oh, the other thing I would say is don't go printing 500 t-shirts. They're going to end up sitting in your garage. Work absolutely with a print on demand solution and test. Does my crowd want coffee mugs or yoga mats or, I don't know, caftans? There's a million things that you could buy and make and sell. Maxine Lynham did a beautiful thing. She created candles, handcrafted, scented candles for her holiday album that smelled like Christmas. And that was a wonderful idea that she went with, and she sold a lot of those. And they had a really nice price point. They were organic. They were made by a woman. She supported a woman-owned business of this woman who made beautiful candles. So win-win there. So I would say try to find something very cool that your crowd might like. You're Dutch, I don't know, custom black salted licorice, or I don't know what's on brand for you, but something really that resonates with your fan base could be really fun.
Thank you. Yes, so that's interesting about email still in this year, that it's still so important, that it didn't go away, and that it is surfed over all the different social media, things that have risen and fallen in importance. So it's interesting. Although with email, certainly a lot of emails can end up in the
promotions folder. Yeah, so there has to be a strategy for that as well. I actually hired a marketing expert a couple of years ago because a lot of our emails were ending up in the promotions folders, and there are many strategies for getting out of people's promotions folders. And so I invite all artists that are concerned about that to really think about how you can change that.
Yeah, cool. Very good advice. So interesting. So what are you going to do with the rest of your day, Ariel?
I'm gonna watch a tiny person who just started walking.
Whoa. So he started walking at 12 months.
Well, he's cruising. He's holding on to things and scooting around, and he's a delight. So yeah, my shift is coming, and I'm gonna spend the rest of my day with him,
Awesome.
and also beginning to put together some webinars for the launch of my book. So beginning to think through what am I going to offer when my book comes out, and so that's going to be the rest of my day.
Okay, that sounds great. That's a lot. Definitely a scooting, walking baby is a game changer. It's
It is a huge game changer. I didn't ask you a lot of questions because I had a lot of long-windedness. What do you think is happening for creatives that right now? Do you feel there's like a shift, a sea change, something that makes you feel hopeful about artists in general?
well, I feel like well, a couple different things, but one that this has happened to us, this is happening, and people feel it, and it's going to obviously be something that people are going to be working with, as in terms of how you feel about things, and also politically the things that have just been going on. I think
Mhm.
so. We've got material to work with. I think that people are really anxious to get back out there and to connect, even though it's so great to have technology to be able to stay connected. I think I think that artists are missing people, just the way everybody's missing people, that we're
Of
missing
course,
each other.
yeah.
So, but I think that, you know, you know, Matisse, for example, he was a painter. He lived in Paris during World War I. He painted throughout World War I. He's been taken to task for it, like that he should have been doing other things, or he should have had a different feeling about it. But he opened up his window the way he did in Nice, and there was Notre Dame outside, and he painted that, and there was a horrific war going on around him. Artists make their stuff and keep going, and people find, people artists have different things to say, notice different things, their output is different. But I think that, I don't know if there will be more output because of all of this, perhaps because people are home. But I know a lot of people have been home and have had a hard time producing work. I'm a songwriter, and I'm constantly writing songs. And in 2020, I wrote a ton of songs, but I really only like six of them. So out of that whole year of songwriting, I have six songs. I'm like, that's not a lot, but that's what I've got out of that. And I think that some people might come up with zero.
It is so funny because as a marketer, I'm like, 6 songs. She could do a release every other month, and she has a whole year. Like, to me, that is a lot. I mean,
Right.
think about it. Like, back in the day, artists would release something every 4 years,
Right.
right? I mean, but I
Yeah.
mean, 6 things that feel like
Yeah.
gems, diamonds, as opposed to like 27 things that feel like, yeah, this is, sort of good, is, I think, during what we're all going through. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that sounds big to me.
Okay, well, that's nice to hear. So that's like, yeah, it's my little success story, my six little gems, and we'll see what I do with them, and I've got plans for those, and plans for moving along. But I do think that artists in general, you feel things, you take it in, and you make what you make. We've got our So we'll see what comes out of this. This is definitely this is definitely like a chapter in our communal lives. Like, we all are in this chapter, and so there are going to be bodies of work and new styles, and that are related specifically to this moment in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know
Agreed.
what's going to happen? There's going to be another moment in time. This,
Totally.
and then another, and on, and we're off, and
Yeah.
and then your son is going to be 15 years old. Then he's going to be 2 years old. My son, my child, he was a baby crawling around very recently. He just turned 22 years old.
Yeah, that's what they say. This all goes so fast. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Before you go, I did want to ask you, you are amazing. I mean, so many people follow you, listen to what you say, admire your career, admire your entrepreneurial approach, um, admire your kindness and your thoughtfulness and your intelligence. I mean, you are really, you're an important person in many people's, scheme of things. And I just wanted to ask you, what do you think your superpower is?
Simplifying what feels complicated.
Oh, wow. That is a great superpower.
And, I think the essence of that is communication.
Yeah.
That's my superpower. And it's something I love doing for other people. It's something I love doing I'm the daughter of an artist. My dad is an artist and doesn't communicate well. And I could see like what the effects of a life like that, what happens. My mother is an excellent communicator, and I could see what are the effects of a life like that coming from the two. But yeah, I think that's my superpower.
Awesome. That's great. So, well, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. This is my evening. You've got your whole day in front of you. Everybody who is live with us, thanks for joining us. It was really nice to see you here. Thank you for asking questions, Andre. So enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are.
Thanks for having me. It was really nice to just have a deep conversation and not answer, how many times should we tweet? That was really
All right. See you later.